What does the idea of leadership mean to you? Is it about position, authority, purpose? And if you think of it as an activity, do you think of it as an activity performed by individuals or perhaps of groups? And if I ask you to think of somebody who exercises leadership, whose face comes to mind? What is their gender? What is their ethnicity? Where do they do their leadership work? How old are they? Now, we'll have come up with many faces between us, but probably many of us have come up with a face that looks like this. It's an older white man, probably a politician or CEO. And as for what is leadership, well, there are probably slightly more opinions on that in this room than there are people. But for me, leadership is about the collective capacity of organisations and communities to meet the challenges they face. And I believe that one key strategy for building that leadership capacity is to challenge the beliefs and practices that have historically seen groups of people excluded from taking up leadership work or not having their leadership work recognised. So today, I want to share with you why my passion is about working with young women whose leadership work is in their own communities and organisations, working to ensure that other women, young women and girls can know and enjoy their human rights. And then at the end, I'm going to ask for your help to ensure that all young people can enjoy the human right of civic participation. By the time I was 12, I had attended 6 primary schools in 2 countries in at least 3 different education systems. And each time we changed schools, me, my brother and sister, my mum would quiz administrators to try and understand what was different about their school system to ensure that we were being placed in the right class. I learnt 2 important things from this experience. 1, institutions are not as immutable as you are often told they are. And 2, you can challenge the system. My challenge to the system started early, in primary school. The lunchline lockout, the girls' soccer sit-in, the petition to sack the school dentist. Me and my friends taking action to fix the wrongs that we experienced in our small and generally safe world. Occasionally, these actions prompted the school to call my mother and ask if she knew what I was doing. But they never had the repercussions that I experienced when I chose to challenge the group of slightly older boys who took control of my student union at the end of my first year at university. Then, my challenges were met with threats of violence and a campaign of gendered harassment. I had grown up being told that girls could do anything, and not really sure on why people kept telling me this. I lacked a framework to understand what was going on. I dropped out of university, literally too scared to go to campus. And so, like many young women, I found feminism after I had my first hard bump with the patriarchy. And like all good teenagers, I wanted most what people told me I couldn't have. I wanted my education, and I wanted to participate in my community. And as over the years I've had the opportunity to achieve those things, the focus of my work has shifted to ensure that other people have those opportunities. And so it's been a fascinating journey through higher education, youth and student movements that has allowed me to many opportunities, from doing grassroots organising, to speaking at the United Nations in New York, to founding a national organisation that continues to flourish 10 years after I left it, to being a ministerial advisor and studying at some of the world's great universities. But there is one phrase that comes back again and again whenever I have been a youth activist or working alongside youth activists. Young people are the leaders of tomorrow. Now, this phrase is generally said with good intentions, but I have to say, it's been pushing my buttons for at least 15 years. Because it overlooks two fundamental problems in the statement. One, it ignores all the leadership work that young people do today. Two, it perpetuates the myth that our leaders should be old, or at least older people. Today and throughout history, we know that young people have traditionally provided leadership to a diversity of social movements. Democratisation and decolonisation movements, workers' movements, environmental movements, movements to end oppression on the basis of gender, sexuality, race, ethnicity, religion, disability status, and of course, student movements. There are two reasons that people suggest that young people are so often found contributing to the leadership of social movements. The first is something that people call biographic availability. For many people, youth is a time before commitments to family, career, or the need to pay your mortgage, which gives you time to do other things. But there's a second, and I think probably more important reason. For many of us, youth is a time where we first realise that the ideals of our community that we've been taught are not the practices that our community enacts. And we believe that if people could just see the gaps we see, there would be change. Because surely we haven't been raised on lies. Surely girls can do anything. All men are created equal, and human rights are universal. But despite that, young people's leadership in social movements is often forgotten, overlooked, or in some cases feared, because as we grow older, we often become more embedded in the system as it is. And so instead of recognising social change leadership, we come to fear the claims that young people make, forgetting that not long ago we would have stood beside them. There's also an issue where the leadership that people did in their youth slips into history. For example, if I ask you, how old do you think Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was when he gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech? What answer comes to mind? 40? 50? He was, in fact, 34. And by that stage had already been part of the leadership of the civil rights movement for nearly 10 years. If I look to my own history, the women's movement in the 1970s in Australia, I know that in that period there were a myriad of organisations and services established. Most of those women aren't well known today, unless you happen to be part of one of those organisations. And the women that are known because of the work they've done over the next 40 years. And so the work they did as young women slips out of their biography. But of course, young people's leadership isn't just an artefact of history. It's happening right now. The Arab Spring reinforced the importance for many people of ensuring that young people participate and contribute to the leadership of our civic institutions. It prompted the United Nations Development Programme to issue its first ever youth strategy, highlighting the importance of bridging the gap between young people's traditional involvement in social movements and their often formal exclusion from positions of leadership in our communities. Because have no doubt about it, young people are excluded from many formal leadership positions in our communities. Globally, less than 2% of national parliamentarians are in their 20s. 1/3 of countries require that a candidate for a national parliament be at least 25. Some set the bar at 30 or even 35. And if we look at charity trustees in England and Wales, less than 1% are between the ages of 18 and 24. However, we know that young people continue to exercise leadership in their communities every day, despite these exclusions. The campaign to end child marriage is one of those examples. It's an intergenerational campaign, but at the heart of it are child brides and former child brides like Marezo. When Marezo was 13, she was taken out of school and married to a man in his 70s. A year later, she had her first child, and at 29 is now the mother of 5. 6 years ago, she ran away from her village and found shelter with the Young Women's Christian Association of Tanzania. Today, she has returned to her village, where she is developing services to support other child brides and working with her community to end that practice. Not everybody supports Marezo's work, but she is building her campaign. And you don't even have to go as far as Tanzania to find examples. You can, in fact, just look on campus any day. And, in fact, if you could see each other around the room. It's the young woman who runs for office despite knowing the likelihood of the sexist abuse that she will face, and the team that gather to support her and to take on the work of challenging homophobia, sexism, racism and transphobia to make sure that those attitudes are no longer acceptable on our campus. You can see it in the multitude of clubs and societies that offer everything from weekly meetings to political campaigns to social, sporting, charitable and employment activities that contribute to the experience of every student and help make this campus, our community and the world a better place. And of course, the officers of our student union and our college who provide the infrastructure for all of this to happen. Clearly, young people lead today. So I'd like to close by making 3 requests. The first, if your work is in social change, regardless of age, I'd like you to remember that understanding you have, that the world is in fact not as it should be, and to hold on to your belief that you can in fact make a difference. Second, if like me, you are no longer a young person, I'd like you to make a pledge to recognise and respect the leadership of young people, whether that's as a colleague, a mentor, or perhaps even as a follower. And finally, the next time somebody says to you, young people are the leaders of tomorrow, could you please firmly add, and today? Thank you.